My theories about what Eren Yeager has been up to strongly play into how I interpret the things I see in his current design. By the way, it's worth clarifying that the designs Mappa has shown us are very closely based on the art style of the manga itself, so it's not like they just pulled it all out of thin air. Wit Studio departed from the manga style more, though I think that worked out wonderfully as well. But I feel that Mappa is already getting a lot of skepticism and criticism before it's really been earned, and the characters also look different because of the time skip as well. Hello listeners, and welcome to A Dash of Salt with AJ. I'm your host, Ahsoka Jackson, blogger, poet, podcaster, and freelance proofreader. Most of the content I make about Attack on Titan is intended for folks who are caught up with all available episodes of the anime, unless otherwise specified, so there's your spoiler warning. And that does include Season 4 content as those episodes are released. There's something Hajime Isayama revealed in an interview during the early days of the Attack on Titan manga. The Attack Titan is meant to have a build akin to that of a middleweight mixed martial arts fighter. Isayama even has a specific fighter in mind who inspired the design, though I can't recall his name at the moment. I'm guessing the MMA connection also helps explain the incorporation of jiu-jitsu in the series. That one fight with Reiner was freaking magnificent, and remains one of my favorite moments of the series. I absolutely lost it when I found a video with a quick breakdown of the different moves and techniques Eren used during that battle. It just made me so happy. I really hope we get to see more stuff like that, and not only with the Attack Titan, but also with Eren in human form as well. Although I realize that in most cases, if he needs to fight, it'll probably be in Titan form. He's much less vulnerable and can also do far more damage at a time. Anyways, what I noticed in looking at the trailer is that Eren's human form and Titan form seem to each be resembling the other more closely over time. His human build is more heavily muscled, and so is the Titan itself from what I can tell. And there are also similarities with his hair. It's like there's been an ebb and flow where he's grown to resemble the Titan, and then it changes correspondingly, and so on. I think that's both the symbolic and more literal thing, where he and the Titan are becoming more synced over time, as he becomes more in tune with and more adept at using it. I also believe that there's a psychological version of all this. The last several episodes of Season 3 had all this really interesting information about the history and nature of the Titans, and there's a particularly intriguing line where it's stated how the inheritor of the Attack Titan always has certain traits. So how does that work? Is it that the Titan itself somehow seeks out certain kinds of people to possess? Or is it that whomever inherits it is then influenced by the Titan's trait? I think it's some of both. I'm also really curious about the original Titans. I'm still not clear on whether the original Titans were humans who possessed the Titan abilities, or whether a purely Titan form came first, and the Titans were then sealed within the humans, much like the tailed beasts in Naruto. Basically, is the original Attack Titan a human or some other type of being? And how much individual identity do the human inheritors possess after their physical deaths? We had this absolute teaser of a scene in Season 3 right after Armin inherited the Colossal Titan. While unconscious, he basically had these moments of communing with the Colossal Titan. In the subtitles, it actually said that it was Berthold's voice that was speaking, although I won't take that as a good guarantee. But whether it was Berthold or the original Colossal Titan, that heavily indicates that either the Titans or the Shifters retain some level of identity separate from that of the current possessor. I think we're definitely going to be learning more about all of this in Season 4. And we also know that Grisha told Eren to look to the previous Shifters for guidance in using his powers. I don't know if that just means accessing their memories, or if it means he'll be speaking to them directly, which would be incredible. I don't know if it's been mentioned how many Attack Titans there have been at this point, but if Eren's going to start speaking to a bunch of them and getting answers, kind of like the Avatar, that is going to be so good. And for one thing, it could finally give him a clear picture of how things played out in the past. Sure, their perceptions may not be fully accurate, but I don't think they'll maliciously and deliberately deceive him. And they were actually there. They're witnesses to the history that took place before he, Grisha, and Kruger were born. Returning to the topic of Eren's human appearance now, I think he's both changed incidentally as a passive result of what he's doing, and also that he's deliberately sought to change himself because of what he's doing. Regarding the former, if he's fighting away from the team and fighting with the resistance like I'm envisioning, then he's probably using the attack titan even more than he did as a member of the reconnaissance regiment. And I think his body reflects a shift away from the more acrobatic fighting style of using ODM gear and more towards a pure brawler sort of fighting style. Not only in terms of using the titan, but also as a human soldier. I'm assuming they don't have the ODM gear over there after all, and that he'll be using a more traditional approach if he fights in human form. Additionally, we've already witnessed in the previous seasons that titan transformations can be very taxing on your body. What's more, if you've already reached a point of vulnerability or exhaustion, you're more vulnerable to the titan form's attempts to absorb your human body. So my theory is that Eren has been specifically working on his physical conditioning in human form to cope with all this, and there are several potential benefits I see here. Being able to sustain transformations longer if that's an issue. Being able to shift into titan form more frequently with less recovery time needed between shifts. And being less vulnerable when he first transforms back into human form. We've seen how he's sometimes been extremely vulnerable at that stage. Unconscious, barely conscious, or too exhausted to move on his own. And it reminds me of my experience in real life, and I'm sure other people out there can relate. Now, I have a whole set of health issues that Eren doesn't. But what I've seen is that strengthening my body has made me able to tolerate physical strain and exertion better, and the recovery afterwards isn't as lengthy. I'm guessing that is in some ways a pretty universal thing, and I think it applies to Eren here. So I think there are very practical, story-related reasons for the extra muscle, in addition to, you know what? I'm gonna make Eren look freaking incredible as an adult. Although, I'm sure that was part of it too. Alright, we've got a couple of episodes left. I'll be sharing the remainder of my thoughts on Eren's appearance, going from the more literal to the more symbolic, and then I'll discuss one of the things I'm most excited about regarding the trailer, which is Eren and Reiner's exchange. By the way, if you think I'm reaching when it comes to the possible symbolism of Eren's adult look, I get it. But it's worth pointing out that this series has all kinds of little details and hints that have been sprinkled throughout. Speaking of which, I really want to know what those purple flowers symbolize. Also, that pomegranate that was shown a couple of times. Actually, wow, I think I just realized what it might be a symbol of. But if I'm right, then it's actually related to a Season 4 spoiler I've heard a little about, so I can't even discuss that yet. Okay, 2 words, just so nobody says later on that I'm bluffing. Multifaceted clairvoyance. I think that's what the pomegranate is symbolizing here. Anyways, another thing about Attack on Titan is that the creator has also woven in elements and symbolism from various mythological, linguistic, and religious sources. And not surprisingly, some of that directly applies to our protagonist here. Look at how Eren's full name works, for example. So I don't think it's a stretch at all to suppose that this trend with him has continued. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you're enjoying the podcast, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, share, or review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, social media, or whichever app you use to listen. I especially look forward to hearing your comments, theories, and questions related to Attack on Titan. Be blessed and stay salty.